Poland. Poland. Famous country in World War II because it was the first country to be attacked by Germany, and also famous for... With the recent addition of No Step Back, there has been a lot of videos trying to change Poland's fate in the war, but instead of trying to resist the inevitable, why not accept Poland's fate and continue a fight in exile? So that's what we are going to do today. We shall establish some colonies overseas and continue the fight against the German menace until Poland is free again. With No Step Back, Poland got a major rework that added an exile tree that can only be completed, well, if you capitulate to either the Germans or the Soviets. And technically we could go and basically do any path we want as long as we're in a faction so we don't die after capitulating to the Germans, but I think there is a path kinda suited for this endeavor. The historical tree doesn't really do much of anything, so we will pass on that one. We have the monarchist options, but all of these paths are more suited to hold the German advance, having some powerful options like forming Poland, Romania, and taking the Czechs for free, so we will also pass on this tree. We then have the fascist tree, which has an interesting path with the Falangist International, but it also has a subjugation option, so yeah, no. That leaves us with the socialist and democratic tree. And by going democratic, we are able to buy some colonies of the Allies by 1938, giving us a place to retreat once the inevitable happens. So this is the path we will be taking, but first we will need to win a civil war. The Civil War works like the Spanish Civil War, where you take control of provinces before the timer runs out. At the start, you can only convert the rural provinces to your side, but with 50 political power you can start converting the industrial heartland. After a few months, the peasants will revolt, and normally you don't really want that as Poland, but since we are playing as the revolt, this means it's almost time for the Civil War. And by early 1937 the Civil War has triggered. The AI will not have a lot of division, so you can exploit the gaps in the front line. And since the most of the victory points are in the western part of Poland, I decided to ignore the part bordering Lithuania, and after basically a month of fighting, the war was over and I was ready to flip to democracy and join the Allies to get those juicy colonies. Here, technically, it doesn't really matter who you pick at the end of the day, and technically, this guy's a better leader overall, I think, over this guy. But the thing is that if we pick to stay with this guy, we remain with this shitty color, sorry to say it, but this is a shitty color, and also I don't really like the flag. So because of that, we're gonna go with the other guy, since we return to the normal pinkish color of Poland and the regular flag. So yeah, and now what we want to do is rush down this focus so we can ally the United Kingdom, and since the UK and France are already in the same alliance, we should be able to buy some colonies of them and start developing them for the eventual downfall. It's also interesting since you can actually take the focus if you go down the communist path, So it's like talking about the KPP, like if it were in charge, but you can also do this focus if you go democratic. So yeah, I like technically it's like in a way it's implied that if you go democratic you go with France, but yeah, I don't know. Paradox, please fix this. I was ready to join the Allies and I was sure they would let me in since I was also a fellow democratic nation and... Wait, what do you mean they said no? Okay, so after convincing the UK to let me join the Allies, I was now a full member of the Allies. Now that we are actually in the Allies, now we can go and pursue this little focus that will actually be we will be able to buy some colonies from the French, because also by my testing, yeah, the fucking UK, fuck you Neville, won't they won't actually want to sell the some colonies, so yeah. But first we must honor our deal to protect Liberia from the vile imperialist invaders. Don't mind us trying to build a colonial empire. And with Liberia in our hands, it's finally time to restart the Polish colonial ambitions. And now technically we can buy some colonies. Like I said before, from my testing, the UK normally doesn't really want to give out their colonies. So, but France actually does. Well, from my testing actually. There we go, Cameroon has been sold. And there we go, Madagascar has also been sold. Like, but if we try like Gambia, yeah, the UK doesn't really want to sell their shit. So, oh, but at least now we have both Cameroon and Madagascar, and now we have our colonies. So now it's time to develop them for when the inevitable collapse happens. Fast forward a year or so, and Germany was gearing up for war with the signing of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, so that meant I had less than 3 months to prepare everything for the inevitable collapse. For meme purposes, I decided to release Czechoslovakia, and that would prove to be a good choice later on. But my time was up and Germany was coming to destroy my shit. Thankfully, in advance I had sent my army, well, my good army, to the UK and tried to hold Warsaw as much as possible, but since I was using the starring divisions and the divisions you get for the Civil War, well, they would not last for long. But by having 60% of war, or surrender limit, I was now able to start the Exile military, so to Madagascar we go. And now stage 2 of the Exile plan was now in motion. To avoid losing 50% of my stockpile, that had been stockpiling over a year, I sent everything to the UK, but since all of the sea routes were now cut off, they would be in a limbo. But this also meant that they didn't have the weapons anymore, so when I capitulated to Germany, they only got the mere scraps. So since I was now in exile, I could now modify the land list to a stop, and voila, I had all my stuff back. Perfect. My mini-tree of exile was now accessible, and let me tell you, that mini-tree gives you a lot of bonuses and buffs, especially to the espionage branch. But I will get on that later, as I still needed to cooperate in the war against the Axis, so it was time to push the Italians out of Africa with the Polish mountaineers. Meanwhile, while this was all happening, France fell to no one's surprise, so we continued on. After pushing out the Italians out of the Horn of Africa, something weird happened. Out of nowhere, the Germans navally invaded the Congo. I don't know how or why, but they just did. And we couldn't actually just push them out, so I started to focus on something else. The intelligence and espionage section was where I actually focused on. You see, if you actually become the spy master and take the focus to expand the intelligence branch, you can actually get at least 6 or 7 spies that can wreak havoc not just to Germany but to everyone in the Axis. But we can't just play as a spy master, that would just be boring. We still need to push the Axis out of Africa for good. So it's finally time to end the Italian rule in Libya. With the fall of Benghazi, the last major port of the Axis was now cut off, so it was time to fast forward to open a new front.
Many months later.
That's right, it's time to launch Polish D-Day. We shall first reclaim France and then push to reclaim our homeland. The initial landings were a success, and the brave Polish soldiers staying in England for over 3 years since the homeland fell have finally set foot in the European mainland, but the fight was far from over as German reinforcements from the east were coming to halt the advance, and halt they did as only a few skirmishes happened for a while. But we couldn't stop there, so after reorganizing the front, and with more allied support, the offensive restarted to take some strategic points over France as supplies were not the greatest, but with Orleans now in our hands and that supply depot, we made the headway into southern France, taking the capital of the collaborationist Vichy French, and almost cutting France into two halves, making the new offensives easier. This also served as a distraction, and with it we managed to liberate Paris from the Germans. With all of these accomplishments done by Polish soldiers, it was only natural to get some compensation, so I asked Mr. Churchill, by now, that we got Ethiopia by expanding the Polish colonial empire. But just forget I said empire because we're supposed to be like liberators, so shh. Back in the front lines, we managed to cut France into two, separating the defenses of Italy and Germany. And something funny happened, as Dunkirk also happened in this timeline, but this time starring Polish soldiers overrunning German troops. With most of northern France secured, the lowlands were now open for liberation, and yet the Germans were still fighting for it tooth and nail. But eventually, after a breakthrough was made, and so now Belgium, Alsace-Lorraine and the southern parts of the Netherlands were now secured.
With more success on the front line, we saw the opportunity to buy more colonies of the British, and would you look at that, they actually sold us the province of Palestine to us, adding more colonies to our ever-growing colonial possessions. We reached a stalemate in the border with Germany and the Netherlands, so to lift some pressure off from southern France, the 2nd Polish Army was sent to clean up the pocket of resistance in Bordeaux, I don't know how to pronounce French, the region bordering neutral Spain, so that more Allied reinforcements could concentrate on Italy and Germany. With the previously mentioned stalemate, the only way to break it was through another naval invasion. So it was time for an invasion of Germany proper, and the base location was Hamburg. The landings took place and opened another front for the Germans to worry about. By doing this, Denmark was cut off from Germany, so it was time for the liberation of Denmark. As we were pushing into Germany, it seemed that the end was near, with Germany collapsing everywhere and it being overrun with my spies. There was not something I didn't know that was happening in Germany. And the biggest news came in when Berlin fell to Polish forces of all armies. This was the greatest humiliation to the Germans, and also a great revenge for the Polish people since the fall of Warsaw. And yes, I know that the Americans actually captured Berlin, not me, but who cares, the game thought it was me, so that's what matters. After this, the Jalta conference fired, and you know the drill, it divided Europe, but also gave me some extra cores.
Oops! Spoilers.
With Germany collapsing everywhere, it was time to end it all and go for the long push home. And you know what? Let's call in the Czechs. Call in the Czechs, and they're immediately going to die. Oh no, they're holding out. Like, I mean, ever since like the war started. Oh, that's going to be a massacre. Okay, this is actually kind of historical now. Look at it, like the Germans holding out here in Prague. No, Prague. What the fuck am I talking about? Am I drunk? Amsterdam, sorry, and The Hague. That's where I meant, The Hague, but I don't know why I thought of Prague or whatever. Yeah, that's kind of historical actually. And the Czechs are still holding on only because, like the French, some French divisions ever since the war started have been stuck there. And now we're actually pushing on to Poland. Poland has come back, baby! Poland is back! Yes! I liberated Warsaw. Where is the bloody event where I liberate Warsaw? Why is it only given to the bloody Soviets? Paradox? Why? After entering Poland proper, Germany finally capitulated, so now Italy was the only major remaining in the Axis. So, and without German support, you can imagine how that went for them. The peace deal fired, and oh god, the border war. And that's why I hate border cores. Oh wait, you actually get cores on this? Oh wait, you actually get cores on this. Oh, I still have cores on my... Oh yeah, I still have cores on the rest of everything. I hate that. Okay, let's do something. Well, after cleaning up a bit, cleaning up whatever I could of the borders, or the border gore that was, the peace deal, I mean, you can still see the remnants of it. The Soviets got Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, and Austria for some reason, I don't know.
I clean up the borders here. Now East Germany is now a puppet of mine, as well as was Germany. Since I took down Germany. Like I was the one who did the naval invasion, so that's only fair. Um, we had to give out away some of our colonies, well, whatever we had, but we now own Cameroon, Madagascar, and Palestine. We're now back in the mainland, in Warsaw. We we went on exile. We liberated our homeland, took what we wanted, took what was rightfully ours. Uh, there's some problem with the borders, like the Soviet just stole half of our country, but we gained half of Germany. Well, half of Eastern Germany. No, actually, all of Eastern Germany. So I consider that a big. We have both West Germany and East Germany as a puppet. So I consider that a success. So, yeah, I think that we're gonna leave it up. Yeah, I'll leave it to future defectors to actually end the video. So yeah.
So before I end the video, I want to say that there was a special operation to make the Warsaw Uprising a thing, but it actually requires 50% resistance on all Polish states, something that I could not do even after actually doing the strengthen the resistance operation that gives like 10% resistance on some states, and I did this like over 6 times, but the thing was that the operation becomes more expensive each time you do it. So, and well, you can't really produce that many guns when you're Poland in exile. So I don't know, maybe it would be cool if Paradox could rebalance it for Poland specifically, since it would have been cool to actually do the Warsaw Uprising. And I actually could only do this when I actually did a test run where I had to make Germany put no garrisons in Poland so that the resistance levels could go up. So yeah, maybe they should rebalance it. I don't know. That's just my opinion. And with that, that's the end of the video. I really hope you enjoyed the video. You are dismissed, soldier.